Hello, DevOps people. Welcome to my live stream. I'm Jochen, and I'm happy to do another session about chef coding. I'll catch right up where I left off last week, and I'm happy to report that my brain to snot ratio in my head has improved tremendously. So this should be less boring and maybe yield more results than last week where I was under a heavy cold. Before I start, if there's anything you'd like to ask or any feedback you have, post it to the chat and I'll do my best to respond there. So let's dive right in. Last week I started working on a chef cookbook for fluentd, a log collection and shipping software that we are going to use in the future. So this cookbook will actually be part of our production infrastructure. And before we can do that, it needs to run properly, which, as this output here in my terminal tells me, isn't the case right now. And the error that I got is due to the fact that I renamed the cookbook from fluentd-freestyle to fluentd_freestyle to avoid naming issues. And obviously I forgot to update a few places, mainly probably the kitchen YAML file. So in order to get tests running again, I'll start with fixing this. Let's take a look. I'm pretty sure. Hi, Stuffy. I may be the wrong person to ask how many degrees of autism you need to use Vim. To be honest, I started using Linux a few years ago, back in 1993, and I was never interested in using Vim, apart from the occasional quick edit on a server that I was logged into. But in somewhere in the last decade, I discovered Vim and tried it and realized that getting a bit of mastery in Vim really makes things easier. For example, I had a few issues running development environments in Docker on my Mac here, and simply switching to one of our many servers to run Docker natively in Linux made things much easier for me. And after a while, you'll either develop the right level of autism or just Vim skills to be productive. I can recommend giving it at least a try. Okay, so somewhere in here there is a hyphen that doesn't belong there. And by the way, especially combined with Tmux, Vim is a great tool. Let's see. This should fix it. During my career, I had been an avid Emacs user. I used Emacs not only for editing, I used it as my newsreader, as my email client, and probably for other things as well. So I know both sides of this divide, and both editors are brilliant solutions. So I'm not going to participate in the editor war here. Okie dokie, tests seem to run. And successfully, yes, at that. Brilliant. Okay, so now that that's fixed, I'm going to do a small commit. But before I do this, I'll create another branch for today's session. And what I'm going to do is to make things more modular. Last week, I wasn't in the state to give this cookbook a proper design, and just by walking back from Starbucks an hour ago, I realized that I should modularize the cookbook into different recipes for different log sources or filters and things like that. So we can mix and match what we need on each of our machines. And since we are using the issue number in our branch names, I'll name this branch 152 modular config. And let's see, git status. I don't need a lot of explanation here, simply fix cookbook name in kitchen YAML. If what I'm doing somehow doesn't tell you anything, just let me know and I'll try to explain it a bit more. I don't know what all your background is, so just challenge me a bit in explaining things. Okie dokie. So, tell me why. Why does making macOS make you cringe? It's not too bad. It's a nice BSD base with a working GUI on top, so that's all I need. Last time I put everything in the default recipe, which should have rang a few bells, but didn't because my brain just wasn't working. So let's try and modularize this. For example, the syslog file resource should get its own recipe. And I'll go right on and create this. And I'll simply add this to the test suite. Yeah, that's great that Chef is basically a DSL built with Ruby, and so I didn't know Ruby before I started using Chef in 2010, and for a long time I simply used the Chef DSL as it is. Only later I realized, okay, if I get some Ruby skills, I'll be able to do a lot more. And that brought me into Ruby. Later, it made me develop our hosting dashboard in Ruby on Rails. And now Ruby is basically our main programming language, even replacing Bash for smaller system automation things that we don't do with Chef, or at least not yet. Okay, with that, I should be able to run Chef successfully again. And I should be able to run the tests as well. if I manage to write verify. Okay, and the syslog configuration gets written as well. That's that, and that's, well, that's worth another commit. Let's not be too I'll write a more elaborate commit message later, probably before I do the pull request. Okay. So, another thing that should go into its own recipe is the forwarder that actually takes the log entries and sends them to a central fluentd instance. And that will also resolve the issue I had before, that I needed to use a dummy port that at least makes fluentd run, but of course will not result in any shipping, because there is simply no fluentd running that would be able to receive the log entries. And I'll be able to replace this default forwarder with a simple standard output, and that'll make testing the cookbook in a container, for example, much easier. So let's take this, create a new recipe, forward fluentd. Hey Cozy, how you doing? Okie dokie, so the default recipe becomes pretty bare, but that's not a bad thing. And let's, oops. Simply extend the test suite here. Folks, I'm curious. Let me know how you found me and why you actually switched in. I broke something. Thanks for following. Okay. What did I break? Couldn't find forward fluentd. Why not? I just created it. Oh, I see why. Good. Verify shouldn't change anything because I'm not testing the fluentd forwarder. Okay. And I agree, Stoffy, testing is hard. It's hard to get your head around it, and writing the right tests to actually test things that make sense takes quite a bit of learning. On the other hand, I'm so happy that TDD has become what it is, because things like the tests we are running in our chef cookbooks made discovering errors or regressions so much easier. Okie dokie. Now, I actually don't want to configure this forward or by default because, as I said, there's simply no fluentd instance that will receive these things. So I'll take this one out for the time being, and do something else. I'll need a output module that will simply write things to standard out. So let's take a look at fluentd, at the documentation. How to configure this. We could write to a file. Why not? Let's see. Here. Standard out might be just the thing. Simply match everything, use type standard out, and it will output data as JSON. Okay, let's give this a try. So, another recipe in recipes. Let's name these things not forward but match standard out. So match everything. Okay. I guess this will work, but to be honest, I'm not sure what happens with the output in when fluentd actually is running. Oops. Oh, of course. I should use the fluentd cookbook syntax, and not. So I need agent, td agent match, I think, and simply type standard out. Tag everything. That's not Ruby. So fluentd match. Let's take a look at what kind of resource the fluentd cookbook that I'm using provides. Fluentd cookbook. agent source, agent match. Here we go. We give it a name, type standard out, tag everything, and that should do it. So let's simply call this standard out, type, this is a string, so that should do it. It's TD agent match. Before they named it fluentd, it was called TD agent because the company behind it is named Treasure Data. I closed it accidentally. Tag is required, of course. fluentd needs to know which log entries we're going to output here. Well, greetings to Italy. I need to go back to Italy someday. I've been to Rome several times and I always enjoyed it. I love the city. We even did a company retreat there a few years ago. Where in Italy are you from, Stoffy? Okay, that looks good. And I'll open another terminal to log in to my test container. Oh, nice. Trentino. Trient. Okay. I assume it's called TD agent. Yep. So we have a few things here. Type. Yeah, that's that. But what I wanted to see was standard out. Match everything. Type standard out. Okay. The only issue is that TD agent runs as a system service, so I assume it'll output things into its own log file. Oh, these permission denied errors should have been resolved. That's part of what I did last week. So I'll have to take a look at this again. Maybe I simply need to restart it. Yeah, I can imagine why it doesn't work. That looks better. Let's take a closer look. I'm curious to see how its configuration looks like. So it still has the forward configuration because the configuration file got created but didn't get removed once I took it out of the chef run list. Then I have the standard out matcher. I'll have the tail on syslog, and it has some things I didn't configure but got configured automatically, I assume. For example, the td log thing. That looks like something that came out of the box. We might take care of that later. And okay. So it does happen if I create a log entry, which I should be able to do with logger. Logger, I think it's priority info test. This should have gone into syslog, yep. And it should have ended up somewhere. Uh-huh. I assume these are actual syslog entries. Temporary fail to flush the buffer. No nodes are available. Oh, of course, yeah, it can't. I need to remove the fluentd forwarder. That thing here. TD agent. Let's trigger another log entry. Yep, as I assumed, the standard out matcher simply writes into the log file. And it said host Jochen, that's my Docker environment, idle logger message test. No priority, but I might have used the wrong command line option. Let's see. Let's refresh my memory. I still assume that priority is the severity info, debug, error and stuff, but somehow that didn't get logged. Maybe because, let's see, how does the original log look? Oh, it didn't log a priority, so there can't be any in the fluentd output either. Okay. Fine with me. That's actually pretty fine and dandy. Source syslog match standard out. I'll go and rename the forward fluentd to match fluentd. Yeah, of course the recipe is new. There wasn't any before. So I'll simply move recipes forward fluentd to recipes match. Match forward fluentd. Okay. So let's see how a converge works. So the suspicion I have is that when I run the default recipe for the first time, it does add the TD agent user to the admin group that's allowed to read varlog syslog. But actually that's too late because the include recipe that ran before that installed and started fluentd, yeah, well, actually started fluentd. So the instance that is running will not be affected from the permissions change I do with this group resource. But that should be resolved if I trigger a restart of the TD agent service. After creating or after adding the TD agent user to the admin group. So this works, and the few tests I have work as well. That's fine. So let's try a complete fresh round with a new container. And if the notifies trigger works, this test should run smoothly. Going back to the editor question, are there any alternatives? Well, I'm reading a lot about Atom recently, so that might be a nice thing. And GitHub recently even added a plugin that allows pair programming right out of Atom. So they basically evolved it from an editor to a pair programming environment. And at FrySteel, we use tmux combined with tmate to do pair programming, but if Atom works right out of the box with things like that, it might be a nice alternative. Here's the restart. Which takes quite a long time. Tmux is nothing to be laughed at, says the Vim user. Back in my day, we only had teletypes. And we had to power them by hand. Well, come on. What's taking so long? Here we go. Tests run. That's a nice thing. I guess if I ran a Linux desktop, I'd use a tiling window manager as well. Oh yeah, macOS isn't too great out of the box in terms of window management. I'm running a nice little app that allows me to tile my yeah, to completely destroy my screen layout here. Help. Nope. I see you laughing. Here we go. Where is full screen? Yeah. Okay, we're back. Oh dear. Yeah. What I wanted to show is here I can tile my windows with this little add-on app, and I can even size windows in a way that I like. But without that, yeah, it's a bit atrocious. Back to work. Okay, it ran. So let's give it another try and see if things actually work. Oh, yeah, of course. I ran kitchen test, and kitchen test cleans up after itself. So I have to spin up another container. I should be able to log in already, even while Chef is running. But let's wait until TD agent is running. This time it was much quicker. Yep, it ended up in syslog, so it should also have ended up in TD agent log, which it did. No permission errors, so I think that issue has been fixed. And I think we can go on to another recipe to actually monitor the chef client log. I'll simply copy the source syslog and use it to monitor a chef log. So I'll use I'm not sure about the format. What kind of formats are there? Parse. Okay, format is not supported officially anymore. Let's take a look at parse. Where is parse? Parse. Here we are. See parser article for more detail. Let's see. Well, there is no particular format, so I'll go with none for the time being, I guess. I see. Here are different parser modules. So what does none do? Probably nothing. With single field. Okay. We can use the regex parser later to split the chef log into sensible fields, but for the time being, I'll use none. And we'll rename this into recipes, source, chef, client, log. Oh, I suspected something like this. Okay. So let's test this as well. Chef client log. Getting chef to run successfully is half the race. Okay. Test shouldn't be affected, but I should add a test for the chef configuration. Which I'm still not too sure how to go about it, but yeah. So we have a default test. These are tests in RSpec syntax that run in the test container. So they are run by something called inspec, which is based on RSpec, but for infrastructure. And let's see how this file should actually be named. Chef client log. Good. And this works as well. I think it's time to do another commit. All right. So let's see if I do a manual test. There isn't a chef client log by default because in this testing environment, chef gets run from the outside of the container and not inside the container, but I can always simulate that. So let's create a varlog chef and varlog chef client log. This should cause a log entry, which it did not. Now it did. Okay. Okay, it might have it might have missed the first test message because the file didn't exist. So let's see if I do a test 2. Yep. And it simply takes the whole line and sends it as the message, with which I'm fine. Okay. That's that. Let's do a rebase of my changes and write a proper commit message. I have a Git configuration that allows me to run git rebase upstream, and it'll simply rebase my changes on the upstream master. So I'll revert the first and then simply merge the second and third commit. I'll keep this as a side note. Split config into recipes. In order to make fluentd configuration modular, I've split the different TD agent resources into separate recipes. Changes. Let's see, which recipe do we do? Okay, I can't see this at the moment because I'm in the middle of created recipes for source and match configurations, fix cookbook name in kitchen YAML, add test for chef client log config, and we'll add that as fixes. Okay, now we have a single big commit, which I can push. And create a new pull request where I also add that it fixes issue number 152. I'll assign myself and label it with the fluentd cookbook label that we are using. So we have a huge chef cookbooks repository where all our own chef cookbooks reside in. We don't do a single repository per cookbook. And we have a tag for each cookbook that we can assign to issues and pull requests, so we can see if there are, for example, multiple cookbooks that are affected by a change, which we wouldn't be able to do if we had separate repositories for each cookbook. And that's that. I create the pull request, and I should add our team as reviewers so I can get some feedback, and I should remove this template stuff. Okay, that's that. And since we've already progressed quite a bit, I'm not sure if I'll switch to a different work item. Let's see. No, I don't think I'll be able to do something reasonable within the next 15 or 20 minutes. So I'll leave it at that. Any final questions or any feedback you have, put it into the chat. I'll be around for quite a while. And if you liked what you saw, join me again. I'll do another session on Thursday at the same time. So simply watch this space and let me know what you liked. Let me know what I should improve. I'm only beginning and I have a lot to learn. But I'll do my best to make this worth your while. And with that, have a great day. Thanks for watching and see you later.